Night shifts in hospitals are never truly quiet, but some nights, they're terrifying. These are the real stories ER staff never forget. Hospitals are places of life and death, where the line between worlds can feel dangerously thin. The stories you're about to hear come from real nurses and doctors, people trained for chaos, but unprepared for what they encountered. So, turn down the lights and get ready for a long, dark shift where not all the patients are on the charts. These are the shifts staff can't explain and can never forget. And remember, some shifts stay with you forever. Our first story comes from Jenna, a veteran night nurse who had spent more than a decade working the graveyard shift. She was known for her calm under pressure and her ability to handle even the most stressful emergencies with a steady hand. But nothing in her years of experience could have prepared her for what happened that night. It was a quiet night, the kind that makes every little sound echo through the halls. Around 3 a.m., Jenna was making her rounds in the West Wing, a part of the hospital that was always eerily silent after midnight. As she passed by the empty corridor, she suddenly heard a faint whisper, so soft she almost thought she imagined it. At first, Jenna blamed exhaustion. After all, long shifts and little sleep can play tricks on the mind. But as she stood there, the whispers grew louder, multiplying as if several voices were murmuring just out of sight. They seemed to be coming from behind the closed door of room 304, a room that had been out of use for months, its bed stripped and lights off. The air around her turned icy, so cold she could see her breath. Jenna's instincts screamed at her to turn back, to leave the corridor and return to the safety of the nurse's station. But curiosity, mixed with a sense of duty, pulled her closer to the door. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched the metal doorknob. It was so cold it almost burned her skin. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy, unnatural silence that pressed in from all sides. Jenna's heart pounded in her chest. She was about to turn away when, from the other side of the door, a single, raspy voice whispered her name, Jenna. The sound was unmistakable, chilling her to the bone. Panic surged through her. She stumbled back, breathless, unable to scream, her legs barely carrying her as she fled down the hallway. When she finally reached the nurse's station, her hands were shaking and her face had gone pale. Jenna immediately called security, insisting that something was wrong in room 304. The guard arrived within minutes, flashlight in hand, and carefully unlocked the door. Inside, the room was empty, undisturbed, and the temperature was perfectly normal. There was no sign that anyone or anything had been there. Officially, the incident was chalked up to stress and fatigue. Her supervisor suggested she take a break, maybe even a few days off. But Jenna knew what she had heard. The voice had spoken her name, and the cold she felt was real. She tried to return to her normal routine, but every night shift after that felt different. The shadows seemed to move when she wasn't looking, and every distant sound made her heart race. She couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was watching her, waiting for her to pass by room 304 again. Eventually, Jenna requested a transfer to day shifts. The sunlight brought her comfort, and the hospital felt less threatening during the day. She never worked another night shift again, and her co-workers noticed she was never quite the same. Even now, Jenna can't explain what happened that night. She's told her story only to a few close friends, but she remains certain of one thing. She wasn't alone in that hallway, and whatever was in room 304 that night, it knew her name. Sometimes when she passes that part of the hospital during the day, she feels a chill run down her spine, as if the room is still waiting for her. Some nights, Jenna still hears the whispers in her dreams, echoing through the darkness, reminding her of the night she'll never forget. Dr. Mark Harris was a skeptic, someone who prided himself on logic and reason, especially after years of working long, grueling shifts at St. Agnes Memorial Hospital. He'd seen enough to know that most so-called hauntings were just tricks of the mind, the result of exhaustion or overactive imaginations. Ghost stories, he believed, were for the waiting room, not the operating room. But all that changed the night he encountered the hospital's South Wing service elevator, a relic from the 1950s, with faded brass buttons and a reputation among the night staff for being temperamental. Mark had always dismissed the rumors, chalking up the elevator's quirks to old wiring and poor maintenance. Yet there was something undeniably odd about how the elevator always seemed to open for him unprompted, as if it was waiting for him specifically. Sometimes he'd be walking down the hall, lost in thought, and the doors would slide open with a soft ding, even though he hadn't pressed the button. At first, he laughed it off, joking with the nurses that he must have a secret admirer in the building's electrical system. He'd step inside, shake his head, and get on with his rounds, never giving it much thought. But soon, the elevator's behavior grew stranger. It began taking him to the basement, even when he'd clearly pressed for the 3rd or 5th floor. The panel would light up for his chosen floor, but the car would descend, ignoring his selection entirely. The lights would flicker overhead, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and the air inside would turn inexplicably cold, so cold that Mark could see his breath, even in the middle of summer. The silence in the elevator felt heavy, almost suffocating. Sometimes, as he stared at his own reflection in the polished steel doors, he'd catch glimpses of shadowy figures standing behind him, just out of focus, just for a moment. He always blamed fatigue, telling himself he was just seeing things after too many sleepless nights. That was until one night, when a code blue sent him racing down the hall. The main elevators were out of service, and he had no choice but to use the old service lift. He pressed the button, heart pounding, and the doors slid open as if the elevator had been expecting him. He pressed for the 5th floor, but the elevator began to descend. The floor indicator ticked down, and the lights flickered violently, plunging the car into near darkness before sputtering back to life. That's when he saw them. No longer just reflections, but actual silent, chilling presences standing beside him. Their faces were blurred, their forms indistinct, but their eyes seemed to bore into him with a cold, unfeeling intensity. The elevator shuddered to a stop at the basement, and the doors creaked open to reveal the pitch-black corridor leading to the morgue. The air was thick with the scent of disinfectant and something older, something musty and forgotten. The shadowy figures didn't move, but Mark felt an overwhelming urge to flee. Every instinct screamed at him to get out, to run, to escape whatever was lurking in the darkness beyond the doors. Panicked, he slammed the door close button over and over, his hands shaking. The elevator seemed to hesitate, as if deciding whether to obey. Just as one of the shadowy figures began to drift closer, the doors finally slid shut, cutting off the darkness and whatever was reaching for him. The elevator lurched upward, and when the doors opened again, Mark found himself in the bright, bustling lobby, surrounded by the living. He stumbled out, gasping for air, his heart racing. He ran out, shaken to his core, unable to shake the feeling that something had followed him, that the elevator itself was somehow alive, aware, and hungry for company. Later, in the quiet of his office, Dr. Harris filed a report about the elevator's malfunction. He left out the part about the shadows, the cold, and the eyes watching him. Some things, he decided, were better left unsaid. The elevator was decommissioned soon after, sealed off with yellow tape and a stern warning for maintenance. But the staff still whisper about it, especially on the night shift, when the halls are empty and the air feels just a little colder. Some say, if you listen closely in the dead of night, you can still hear the old elevator groaning its way down to the basement, carrying passengers no one can see, and waiting for the next soul brave enough to step inside. Room 408 is just another room on paper, indistinguishable from the dozens of others lining the hospital's long, echoing corridors. But to the night staff, it's a place shrouded in unease, haunted by the memory of Mr. Gable, a lonely patient who died there decades ago, his presence lingering like a chill that never quite leaves. The story of Mr. Gable is whispered in break rooms and passed down to every new nurse, a cautionary tale that's become part of the hospital's very fabric. After his death, the ordinary routines of the night shift began to unravel. It started subtly. The call light in 408 would flash at odd hours, even when the room was empty and locked. Nurses would hear the unmistakable sound of coughing, Mr. Gable's persistent, rattling cough echoing down the hallway, only to find the room deserted. Security cameras meant to bring comfort instead captured fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure moving just out of sight, always near 408. The strangest sign was always the bed. Even after housekeeping made it up, staff would return to find a deep, cold indentation in the mattress, as if someone invisible had been sitting there for hours. The air in the room would be icy, and sometimes you could see your breath hang in the air, swirling in the dim light. New nurse Sarah, fresh out of school and eager to prove herself, dismissed the stories as nothing more than superstition. She rolled her eyes at the warnings, confident that she'd seen enough during her training to handle anything. That confidence lasted until the night she was assigned to 408. It was just past midnight when the call light for 408 began to flash insistently. The system showed a manual press from inside the room, even though Sarah knew it was unoccupied. She hesitated, remembering the stories, but duty called. She grabbed her chart and made her way down the silent hallway, the only sound her own footsteps echoing off the linoleum. Sarah entered the dark, freezing room. The temperature dropped instantly and her breath became visible in the air. The smell of pipe tobacco, Mr. Gable's favorite, hung thickly, impossible to ignore. It was as if someone had just been there, enjoying a final smoke. She checked the bed and the call button, her hands trembling slightly. Both were empty, untouched. There was no sign of anyone, yet the sense of being watched was overwhelming, pressing down on her like a weight. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her with a force that rattled the glass. Sarah spun around, heart pounding, and realized her radio was outside. She was trapped, alone in the freezing darkness, with only the memory of the stories for company. In the corner, the old wooden rocking chair began to move, creaking back and forth as if someone invisible had just taken a seat. The cold in the room intensified, seeping into Sarah's bones, making her teeth chatter. Sarah watched in horror as a deep indentation formed in the bed, the mattress sinking under the weight of something unseen. It was as if Mr. Gable himself had returned, settling in for another long night. Panic overtook her. She screamed for help, her voice echoing off the sterile walls. Outside, staff rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room was locked tight, the handle frozen in place, and the temperature continued to plummet. When the door finally opened, Sarah stumbled out, shaking and pale. She was never the same after that night. Traumatized, she requested a transfer and left the hospital within days, refusing to ever speak of what happened in room 408. Room 408 was sealed soon after, a maintenance sign placed on the door as an excuse. But the staff still avoid it, walking quickly past at night, eyes averted. Some say you can still hear the rocking chair creak, or catch a whiff of pipe tobacco drifting into the hallway. Mr. Gable, it seems, never checked out. His story lingers in the cold air of room 408, a reminder that some patients leave a mark that can never be erased. Some shifts leave you with stories you can't shake, and sometimes those stories follow you home. For Jenna, Dr. Harris, and Sarah, the hospital became a place where the line between the living and the dead blurred. Even in places of science, some things defy explanation. Whispers in empty halls, elevators with minds of their own, rooms that refuse to be vacant. These are the legacies of a place filled with life and loss. Maybe these are just echoes of the past, or maybe there's something else. What do you think? Are these tricks of exhausted minds, or is there more to these chilling encounters? Share your own stories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Killer Saturday Tales.